Benton Harbor, Michigan is a unique place on the lake that is home to less than 10,000 people with the hearts of 1 million. From the outside looking in, there's a strong emphasis on place. The location on the lake and easy access to I-94. But this series focuses on the people and their view of leadership, influence, and power and how it impacts the 49022. So we welcome you to this special series for the Please Do Tell podcast that is all about the stories and people of Benton Harbor, Michigan. And today we are joined with Mr. Perry Jackson, and he's going to talk a little bit about himself and why he wanted to even be a part of this project. But first, I want to thank you, Perry, for being with us today.
It's a pleasure and an honor. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and also tell us why you wanted to be a part of this project?
Well, in short, I was a young man who, was brought up, I think the right way, made some wrong choices, done some things that got me incarcerated, unfortunately, for 26 years. But during that 26 years, I used prison or my incarceration as a university. So, I've educated myself, and I've seen a lot of young men from my community come in, to prison, and me having an opportunity, mentally, and emotionally to see where they were in their lives and what had transpired in the city of Benton Harbor since I had left, and me coming home immediately and seeing so much violence and just murders and shootings, we all have aspiration to come home and want to, change the community, especially after we better ourselves. But, I first learned, hey, even though I see all this going on in my community, I first have to try to better my family, and some of my cousins who are, going down, degenerate paths, and try to bring them back. But in the midst of which is so much violence, and one thing I wanted to do was have an opportunity to see what were the thoughts. You guys gave me an opportunity to see, interview some people and see what their thoughts was about power, leadership, and influence, because I've seen those type of things in prison, power, leadership, and influence be misused and abused, and how so many young men were led down, the wrong road. So, this opportunity has given me an opportunity to see from a community standpoint versus an incarceration standpoint, to see into the mindsets and the hearts of the people of Benton Harbor and what they think. So I had some, interesting interviews. If that's my opinion, but hopefully the viewing audience will like it as well.
So, in one of the interviews that we're actually going to go to first, you talk about, and which I thought was so cool, and I wanted to hear more about it, even just how your influence has impacted quite a few people in this community since you've been home. And in your conversation with Precious that we're going to get to, you talked about, you just sitting down with two young men and basically giving your perspective of like, this is where I've been and this is where you don't need to go. And basically them having a misunderstanding. Can you share that story with us? Are you able to share that story with us?
Yeah. So, just to give you some backdrop and how we got to that, for me, I was always being told, to use my platform, basically my story for the right, for the right thing in the right situation. So when I realized that social media was one of the 3 or 4 biggest platforms in the world, because you have television, you have radio, you have social media, and you have podcasts, right? So you have an opportunity to really get in, in the homes and hearts of people. So I wanted to be very careful or tactful in the way that I address, people who are on my social media page know that 90% of my social media page is all about positive stuff. I personally, address 1 or 2 things that, that I just address based upon me not being able to see people. But I was just talking about everything that was going on in the city and how, I'm just willing to, be of assistance, to be a ear or anything in order to help people understand that, hey, this is what gun violence to do. Anytime you have a gun, what you're doing is you have the first most powerful thing under God. You have control to take somebody's life where their life seems to exist. And that's a powerful thing. So me being on that end of that scope, I realized I would never, like to see another human being life being taken. But what happened was, you know, I reached out and I said, listen, if anybody got any problem that they want me to, sit down with individuals and talk about within reason and within the scope of my parole. Um, so ironically, not long later, two men had a disagreement or misunderstanding. One guy was talking to his girlfriend on the phone, but facial expressions, can actually, alter a person's perception. You know what I mean? So what happened was he was arguing with his girlfriend, but as he was arguing with his girlfriend and giving off certain facial expressions, he was, unbeknown to him, looking towards a guy, and the guy thought that he was, what they call mean mugging. And so, word got back was like, yeah, this is, dude looking at me this way, and I'm gonna address it when I see him. And so I think it was his uncle or his cousin reached out to me like, look, I know my family member, he can fly off the handle, especially with guns. And so I wanted to be careful, because that was a very, very, what word I'm looking for? Very delicate, right? That's a very delicate situation because I understand my position in being free, being on parole. I can't insert myself in those situations. But what I did is I called and talked. I got in touch with the guy who was talking to his girlfriend. And, telling him, what's the issue with you and this guy? He was like, man, that me and him had an issue with a girl back in high school, that I had from him or something like that. And I'm like, well, he seems to think that you were looking at him a certain way. He was like, hold on. He get on the phone and he said, called his girl. And he was like, baby, I'm going to ask you a question. What was we just talking about? She's like, what you mean? He was like, I got somebody here. I just want to understand what we're talking about. To talking about personal things, what he was doing to her, and we were arguing, but it's all good. And so I went back to the young man who took it offensive, and I said, listen, man, what you thought, that wasn't what it was. I say sometimes people may be, their minds may be geared towards one thing, and their facial expression is geared towards that. But when a person look at, he looked towards you, and you automatically took that because you knew that he, in so many words, took your girlfriend away from you. I say, man, don't allow that to put you in a position where you end up spending, the rest of your life in prison. Then I gave him my story, and he was kind of like, whoa, you know what I mean? And so it was more so like a dilemma tale or reality tale of me giving him the backdrop of my story. And so much could have been prevented, because one of the most important things I shared with him is that I wish somebody would have intervened in my situation. I wish our bigger homies would have been like, look, man, I'm going to get you together, and I'm going to get you, I'm going to get my, which is my victim, grab him and grab me. I say, listen, what's your issue with him and what's your issue with him? And then I could have understood exactly what he didn't like about me or what was the misunderstanding. And I could have told him the same. And that's one thing in our community that we don't do. We allow our friends. I have people, my, guys that I grew up with, they were basically like egging me on, and then his friends were egging him on. So it was an ego thing, right? And so ego, for me, I've learned to take that word and put an acronym with it. Anytime you have an ego, you're edging God out. You're edging God out, and you're coming from a personal standpoint, and you're feeling attacked, right? And so now you want to defend, or you want to show people that I'm not a punk, I'm not scared. And that has led to so many murders. That's been the theme of the guys that I've ran into in prison. That's been the theme of the guys who I've sat down and built with. It's like most of it could have been avoided. And so I've done my best to make sure that I tried to talk to them gentlemen so it won't lead up to that. And so, it was a follow-up probably about a month later, like, look, do we ever run into each other? It's like everything was all good. So I was most pleased with that outcome.
Yeah. Man, using your influence, using your story. Yes. So we're going to go into Precious, because she defines influence and leadership and power within her interview. But tell me first, why did you decide to interview Precious?
So, Precious family, her mom, and her uncle. Her uncle is one of my best friends. So I've always been knowing her since she was a kid. And then me
Okay.
being incarcerated, I've always kept in touch with the family. And her Precious mother is like a god sister to me. She was there for me when a lot of people wasn't. And so, I look at her as a big sister. And I've always, I was always being told what Precious was doing, coming up, education, leaving, the educational system for Benton Harbor and going to, a different area and actually, getting a better education, coming up doing school. And then the decisions that she was making, and then also how she was giving back her time, from the jobs that she had, whether it was a social worker or whether it was working, I think as at a juvenile detention center or something, but she was always giving
Mm-hmm.
because she had a heart. So that led me to, you know what, I'm gonna reach out to Precious because she's definitely one who's definitely, lent her influence and her time to better people's lives. So I thought that was very appropriate for me to get her on board.
Okay, so now we're going to hear from Precious, and she's basically defining what influence looks like in this community.
When we think of influence in this community, what does it look like?
Um, so I'm gonna read what I put. I wrote down the questions and the answers just to get like a general idea of what my understanding of the question was,
Okay.
and then I'll break it down a little bit more. So, influence in the community, in our community specifically, right? So I first wanted to go in and say what I feel like influence is in order to describe what I feel like influence is in our community. So I put in general, influence in the community is the thing that people are trying to achieve or the person that the people in the community are inspired to be like. So in our community, I feel like people are influenced by things, material things, things that they see on TV, things that they see other people have or do. So a few of my examples, I put beauty, cars, designer, flash of money. That's what I see in my peer group. You know what I'm saying? Like other people may see different things, but for me and what I see around here in our community is a lot of people who are inspiring to be like what they see on TV or what they see these other flashy people doing. And that's okay. People can be inspired by whatever they want to be inspired by. But influence is what I feel like people are trying to be. So, and I said in the community that I just moved from, well, not just moved from, but I've been here for about 3 years now. But prior to me moving here, I lived in a community where everybody was inspired or influenced by education. So I lived in a small community where everybody went to school and everybody was trying to get a degree and get money. Like everybody trying to get money, everybody trying to be wealthy. That's like what everybody's trying to do or what I feel like they're trying to do. So I think in our community here in Benton Harbor, people are inspired or influenced by things, material.
Okay. And it's interesting. And I'm glad to have.
So when I heard her say that definitely hit different for me. But I want to hear did you agree with her, or like how did her response to that even? Because it seems like it was different from some of the other interviews that you did.
Right. So I think what happens a lot, right? A lot of times we all subscribe to a particular standard or a particular way of thinking as if like a word, supremacy, right? When you think of that word, the first thing a person would think is KKK, somebody thinking that they're just solely better and more superior than the next person, right? So the way I've taught my mind to operate is, okay, even though God said all men are created equal, in which I know that, right? But what happens is I have a particular orientation of the mind of belief that, okay, I am a supreme being, meaning that if I look at, not in an arrogant way, if I look at myself and being better than you, but if I possess a certain mind state, it'll give me a certain motivation and drive to do things in a supreme way. That doesn't necessarily mean negative. So when she said that, what grabbed my attention is she was right on point with with her way of life, of her way of thinking, right? So there's not just one way to look at a thing. Most of us would look at the glass half empty or half full, but she may have looked at it half empty, right? So it's basically the same. It's always another side to be considered. When she talked about even me not being here for 26 years, I've also done my best to keep a pulse on the streets of Benton Harbor with the people I've stayed in contact with. So it's like I knew a lot was going on with the young men coming to prison, telling me what was going on. And the biggest thing is there's nothing powerful. Okay, great. We had Wilson Chandler, very successful career in the NBA. We had Joey Bell, very successful career running back. It's just that we only have a few people to hold on to that we know. Iris Kyle, very successful. Matter of fact, the most successful career as a female bodybuilder. You look at, if you're old enough to know, a Sinbad, or Ernie Hudson. We're looking at entertainers and actors and athletes, but our whole thing is, there are people being influenced about around here, and it's who can have the cleanest car. Now, don't get me wrong. Even with clothes, fashion is a part of who we are, right? Fashion is a part. We're all influenced by fashion. This is why we go by the name brand things. So there's nothing wrong with being influenced by those things. But what was more important is when she talked about her being born here and raised here, and then when she felt like education system here wasn't really getting to her, and that's what she talked about more in depth in this interview. Her mom sent her to Grand Rapids, and she went to this particular community in the Grand Rapids area. I forgot what area it was, but she realized that, hey, the schoolwork in Benton Harbor was easy, but when I come out here, my grades were failing. However, she knew she took it as a challenge for herself, because she seen those around her who all they were talking about was going to college, getting degrees, and so that's what influenced her, because if you have a like-minded people who think in one way versus here in the city of Benton Harbor. Listen, I love Benton Harbor. I'm talking about, right? I would defend Benton Harbor. It's not it's not the city limits of the street signs. It's the orientation of the mind and how we see things, and that's what I got from her. She's seen it being one way here, and then she got out of this community and she went to another community, and that community pushed her harder than the community of Benton Harbor, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But, that's just the reality of things. Now, in my humble opinion, I may not be right, but just how I've seen it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I even listening to her interview, it made me think about even the young people that I've had the pleasure of working with over the last 4 years. A lot of them, they'll say, well, what high school did you go to? The one across the street, Benton Harbor. What? Yeah, I went to Benton Harbor. My sister, my brother, my mom, my dad, everybody came out of Benton Harbor High. And they're like, but you went off to college, you did all these things. I said, I didn't have a choice. There was someone in my household or someone in my family influencing me, and almost it's like I said, I had no choice. It wasn't going to work. It was, you have to go to college. That's the only option that you have. But that's really all that I knew, and those were the friends that I hung around. But she was right with, there's a lot of influence of, you're able to buy these new outfits, you're able to buy this name brand, then you're able to post it on social media, and then the next thing is like, go like my picture, go share my photo, I want to go viral. So it's this urge to go viral off of just things. And it's like, well, what about education? Can you read? Can you understand that reading comprehension? So that part of that interview hit different for me, because it's like she shouldn't have had to go anywhere else in order to get that educational influence.
Right.
So what can we do as a community to encourage that a little bit more. And I'm not saying everyone needs to go off to college or whatever, but I'm just saying you need to have at least the basics. You need to be able to read and comprehend and know just all of that. But yeah, that was just like an aha moment for me. Like, we still have more work to do.
Right. So of course, anything I say is just based all upon my opinion, right? So
Yeah.
I think what happens is when it comes to the educational system, is something, does the community play a role in the educational system? It's really hard to really just nail that part of it down. But what happens is that everything in life has to be revised at one time or another, right? So you can't just continue to use the same text.
Mm-hmm.
When someone in another community or another city is using different texts, textbooks. Mm-hmm. And so, the teachers that raised me, I so appreciate them, because they were not only in my life for school. I've had teachers come over to my home and, eat dinner and, take me places. And so those are the things that I love. I don't know what these teachers are doing now, right? Mm-hmm. But what happens is that there's just so many distractions, and parenting is different. There was a time where we were, getting whoopings with certain things that, were child abuse back then, but still it's more magnified now. But mm-hmm. even the people down the street would try to correct us until our mom come home, and they would tell our mom, and our mom mm-hmm. and the dads would get on us. But mm-hmm. it's like now the parents now are only teaching according to what they were taught, right? Like your mom, my dad, they only know what my grandfather and our grandfather and our grandmother only, taught them. So here it is. Yeah. They go out and they try to do their best. So every parent was not raised the same way. Everybody's experience is different. It's just that we have to find a way to make it with the low impoverished communities, because these moms and these children, they have so much stress on them after school, right? So yeah. Just to give you, real quick an understanding of real means. So I'm an avid reader. I love to read. So over my years, I've read over 300 books, close to 400, right? So, and these are all self-help books. And one of the most important books that I've read was one by L. Ron Hubbard. He's the founder of Scientology. Now, I'm a person to say that one religion doesn't define who I am, because I learned from all of them. But what happened was, in a 5-year span, I lost my brother, I lost my mother, and I lost my grandmother. So emotionally, that was just so much for me, especially being incarcerated. Yeah. So my counselor asked me to go see the site. And in my mind, I was so caught up in what the standard mentally of Black community. I don't want to see a psychologist. I don't never want to, they try to give you medication, or well, I ain't crazy. But what was to my benefit, because I had studied psychology and social work, and I have a degree in psychology and social work. I graduated with high honors in it. So I was very familiar of the person I was going to talk to, and having an understanding of what was going to go on. Unfortunately, people don't have that opportunity to do that. So when I went to the site and I sat down, and she gave me opportunity to just talk, right? And when I talked, I learned so much about myself, with just really, it's so many words. You're listening to yourself talk. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like, okay, sometimes we be scared to open up to one another, our parents. Mm-hmm. And I came up out of there. I didn't cry when my mom passed. I didn't cry when my brother passed, and I didn't cry when my grandmother passed. I don't know. It was a disconnect emotionally, because in prison, if you one of those type of individuals, you'd be looked at certain ways. So I was so sad at myself that I didn't allow myself to grieve properly, and that's the stage I'm still going through. But my point is, when I read the book by L. Ron Hubbard, what it showed me is that he says a thing called engrams. It's traumatic experiences that happen in your life that you have yet to address. Meaning, Ronnika can be a class act, straight A student, but then you look on the news and Ronnika then shot up the food place. It'd be like, well, we never seen that from her. She was a good girl, or he was a good kid. How did that happen? Things don't just happen. Those are experiences that you have yet to be addressed in your mind. And these things are ingrained, and these experiences are ingrained into your mind because they haven't been properly addressed. Mm-hmm. So who knows? A young man or a young lady may have been raped when they were a child. You know what I mean? And they never told nobody. So they're dealing with that emotional and that mental experience that they have yet to talk to anyone about. Mm. So then it comes to a point where so much pressure, there's a breaking point. But in my story, I ended up having a panic attack, right? And so everybody thought I had a heart attack. So my friends were calling home to the community, telling my family study, calling the prison. Like, everybody thought I had a heart attack. But come to find out, it was a panic attack. And it was just so much pressure being built up on me. And it's like, man, I couldn't breathe. I felt like somebody was sitting on my chest. And then once I really understood all that, after reading that book and going to see the site, I mean, after talking, I felt so free. I felt so enlightened. I felt like I can give my story to anyone. Yeah. I can tell them my experiences of everything. So, yeah. And so, that being said, I think that's what's going on in our community with our young brothers and sisters. They're so, absolutely, they can't focus on schoolwork. They can't focus on all the things because they don't know where they're going to get their next meal from. Yeah. They don't know where they're going to get their next pair of shoes from because moms are struggling. Fathers are being, incarcerated for so much of a big length of a time. And then some fathers just don't want to, do their jobs. But that's a lot of pressure on a child to perform academically. Right. Yeah. And these are the things that need to be addressed. But in particular, our community is not the only community that's going through this. There's so many communities across the United States, especially low impoverished Black communities where there's less help. So when you have these places, so like I'm grateful that Lakeland has given us the opportunity to talk about this. Right. But at the same time, you have headquarters like a Whirlpool. Who am I to tell you how to spend your money? But if you're in our community, don't you know what $200,000 or $300,000 can do with a plan? What stress it can take off a child's life to make them perform better? I've always thought about we teach children, or the educational system teaches you how to manage other people's money. Go to school, I want to be an accountant. Okay, that's great. So you want to count somebody else's money. Well, why are we teaching children? Why is there not a class in junior high teaching them how to manage money and be entrepreneurs? Okay. Each class, you section these kids off. This is just a quick story, a quick idea. And you take them and you say, hey, I'm gonna get 10 of y'all together, this 10 together, this 10 together. And I'm gonna let y'all work on a plan. Now, this is you guys' money. I'm gonna invest $5,000 into your plan. What child don't want to work for their own money, right? Mm-hmm. And so whatever product they come up with, they're going to work hard selling that product because they know that money is coming back in their pocket. However, they would eventually give the person or the corporation's money back who funded that. So it's more so like, hey, I'm lending you this money with no interest. Start a business, but then give me my money back. So now you're helping someone start their own business and be their own entrepreneur versus going to school, going 4 years of college, sometimes 6, getting a master. Then you owe all these student loans and you're trying to pay these off until you're 40 and 45. So now you're a slave to a system that's just so crazy to me. So that's why even coming home, I'm like, I'm self-employed. I've created, each day I'm creating an idea or a possible way of getting multiple streams of revenue for myself while I'm working for my family. I would prefer to work for my family versus working for a system that, hey, I'm sick today. I ain't gonna be able to come in. Well, okay, you fired. Yes. So it's just, it's just crazy. But, for the community, I think we need a better hand of putting some type of program together in order to get these young men and women. But it definitely has to start psychologically with them. We need to find out the backdrop of who they are and what they're going through in order to help them.
So I knew when we had this conversation, I said, Perry and I are going to get to talking and he's going to hit every point and then we're going to have to tie it back to the stories because I told you, many people have told you that I could listen to you talk all day. I really can. I can. But Precious told a story about leadership, like an example of when she saw leadership in this community. And that story actually ties into power, like who has the power in this community and actually challenging that power. So I want us to listen to that, and then I want us to dive into Toya's story.
Someone demonstrated leadership?
I put in our community, one of the acts of leadership that really stood out to me was, I think it was last year when Benton Harbor area schools have been being threatened to be shut down. And there was proposals going back and forward from the governor and the people up top, up in Lansing, and our school board. Well, they really weren't trying to hear what we had to say. You know, we went up there and, well, not me, but people in the community went up to Lansing and, you know, they, tried to get through to people, but they weren't really trying to hear what we had to say. Well, the mayor, Marcus Muhammad, made a statement that if they don't listen to what we have to say or, reevaluate this proposal, then he would not allow the PGA golf tournament to take place here in our community. And I thought that was huge. Like, it was stern. It was a stern.
So he stood for something.
Yeah, he did. He stood for something. He said, look, this is our community. You bring your people here and make millions of dollars here in our city, and you want to shut our schools down. That's not okay. So we either have to come make some sort of decision, make some sort of change, or you're not going to be able to come in here and do that with us no more. So I thought that was deep. I thought that was
I can remember when that happened. I can remember our mayor even putting it on Facebook, and it was huge. Like, it was, you had some people like, wow, that's a huge statement to make. And then other people were probably saying like, oh, he crazy, like he can't do that. But me not really knowing about politics, but it was almost like the first time that I really saw someone that was in leadership be vocal and challenge someone.
Challenge the system, the system, status quo. Yeah, man, listen, when she said that, I think we talked about that a little bit more after, because what was most important is that, I told her, it's just unfortunate in life, no matter how you look at it, when you're talking about somebody's bottom line, it changed the whole scope of conversations, right? Money is the lever to get people to move. Money is the lever to get other people to move. So if I say, Ronnika, I need you to do something for me, the typical person's mindset is, what's in it for me? So it's hard for us to do stuff because it's just the right thing to do, right? Versus somebody always wanting something in return, whether it's monetary value, or what have you. But but that's just the way the system is, right? It's just flat out wrong. And you have certain people, those who may comment and say, oh, what are you doing that for? I can really say some very intelligent, deep things about people who think like that. That's really why we're in the condition that we are. So no one is willing to sacrifice. That man really put his career on the line for this city, because I've read so much on how they, and I'm not saying I agree or I disagree, but it's just reading in the papers on how they done Reverend Pinckney, no matter what people's personal opinion was, when he quoted that Bible verse in front of that judge, he had so much power and influence over somebody else, over one decision, right? So the people who puts on these robes and sets, up here on these benches with these gavels, they're tasked with one of the most powerful voices, almost next to God, because they can control you and what happened to you and what direction your life goes, right? So one has to be careful when they're in a position to judge, right? And so that's what's going on. We're judging Marcus Muhammad for what he's not doing, but he can't do everything, but he done the most important thing. He kept a school system operating. That's powerful because you have anywhere from 500 to, at one point in time, we was a school was almost 1,000 children.
Mm-hmm.
He's continued to give them an opportunity instead of busing them out to other communities, all clear Coloma, and boosting their financial rate and taking them from a class C or a class B to a class A based upon the amount of students that you have. You see what I'm saying? We would be outsourcing and giving all this stuff to these other schools and these other communities, but he fought. And for those who stood behind him, listen, big up to them.
Yeah. What was your biggest takeaway, even when it comes to your conversation with Precious?
For the first time, coming home, I had just been seeing people and just having conversations. But for the first time, talking to her and hearing her story, because, anytime I would see her, I would talk to her on just typical things around, sweetheart, how you doing? You need anything I can do for you? I mean, just doing the thing that, a god uncle or, somebody who's, in her life, would do. But I was almost embarrassed that I didn't realize how intelligent she was. And so, it's more so like, wow. And then not only that, she has a sense of the system. Does the system work for us? Yeah. But does the system work against us sometimes? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just describing her being a social worker and her having, her heart, it beats for the better. She wants to help people. When she became a caseworker, and she seen the way other caseworkers were treating certain people, and she knew it was wrong, and she spoke out.
Mm-hmm.
It made her emotional that, hey, how can you treat a family like this? How can you treat a young man or a young girl who needs to be placed somewhere like this? Oh, just do the paperwork and push it through. And it's like sometimes people look at lives like just a piece of paper, just something you can push through.
Mm-hmm.
It just shows me that, her future is so bright. She has so much to give, so much to offer, and yeah, that's what I got from her.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk about your conversation with Toya. So how did you get connected with Toya, and how did you get her to even participate and tell her story?
Mm-hmm. So me coming home and on Sundays, I would watch my older cousin, who I looked up to play baseball. He in his 50s who played baseball, and I began to see a lot of people that I knew, that I grew up with or grew up under, and they had a community game. So now you got to understand, me being gone 26 years, my history of things, basketball games and stuff like that happen typically every week. It's almost a fight or something just negative happening. And so after the third and fourth week, I would see this, because I would travel, from Muskegon down to Benton Harbor, spend more time with family on the weekends. Before I leave, I'll stop and watch the baseball game. And then I was just seeing them just give food away. They was letting anybody play baseball. They was allowing the women to play baseball and participate. So I was watching something that I had never experienced or seen before, right? And then I want to just try to pay attention. Well, who running this? I've seen a couple, people. Of course, it takes more than one to keep the operation going because there's so many things going. You have one guy running the food thing. He'll tell you, listen, I'm not selling no food. If you're hungry, you can eat. But what we would like, donate what you can because it continues to help us further cooking food and just giving it out.
Okay.
And so then I watched her, the way she would set up things. And then so I knew her. Well, I met her through a mutual friend. She was like, yeah, she's one of the people who basically organized this and ran it. And so, and I was just, even before I thought about the, before the interview opportunity came up. But then when this opportunity came up to be a so-called freelance journalist,
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? Because during COVID, it's really, not much going on. So you really can't no one is being magnified for what they're doing in the community because everybody was more so laying back because of COVID. But that was an opportunity for me to reach out to a friend of mine who know her, got us in contact, and I told her what I was doing. And a lot of people, rightly so, they would be hesitant because typically what happens is you have people from the outside, they would come in these communities, get all this data, and then they would start their own nonprofit organization and gain money from it, right? So I had to convince them, like, hey, I've talked to them about what the potential could happen going forward. So I really wanted to, know that what you're saying, it's going to be heard.
Yeah.
And so thus, right now, so we're sitting here and now her story, her voice is being heard, thanks with her consent that, she definitely has something to say, but, she's a mother who's been through a lot, raising her children, starts trying to start a baseball program, being the chef and all that. So, she has a weighty responsibility in her life, and those that you want to shine light on, appreciate and be thankful for.
So I know in the very beginning of her interview, she talks about being a chef and just how COVID just kind of changed her plans in so many ways. Like this year has it's been a year like we've never seen before, but we can also say that it has birthed some great opportunities for so many people, even this project or even this community-based sports league, which I just loved hearing about, and it even connects to the next story that we're going to talk about too. But she talks about and I love hearing these stories of how she was inspired by certain people in order to do what she decided to do. Like, I definitely don't want to take away from what she did, because like starting a sports league during COVID and even getting people to participate and then doing social distancing, I was just listening to it like, wow, you turned some lemons into lemonade for real, like in a matter of weeks. And how she just was supported by she got support from, as we mentioned before, you try not to pull on those that we see, like you try not to reach out to Sinbad too much, or Ernie Hudson or Wilson or Joy, but she decided he wanted to be in partnership with her. He saw something in her and was like, no, let me partner with you. But she talks about her inspiration. And I want to talk about that because I don't think that a lot of people get their flowers. And so I want to be able to, in her words, for her to talk about the women that inspired her.
Free for the players, like things from the concession stand, the food, beverage tent that we had. Everything was pretty much free. Pretty much a lot of the stuff was free, like far as the food and beverage. All we was asking was just for like $battery $. You come and get you a whole little meal deal, So it all worked out, and it was a big. You got a lot of older people that started it. I got an inspiration from like the Campbell women, the older Campbell women. They used to do that back in the days. So I got inspired by that. I'm like, okay, let's just plant the right seeds and see if it'll grow. And so we planted the right seeds and it grew. And you have, like people that just from the community that just come out behind the fence trying to catch home run balls. And, you got people that's looking forward to coming out Sunday, 2:00, setting up their little barbecue grills and just enjoying themselves. It ain't been no drama, no fighting. Been a little bit, how you do the bad calls with the umpire. Other than that, it's been all love.
Yeah, I for the last 2.5 to 3 months, I've been coming through there and definitely just seeing everything, back in the day when we were doing things. Back then, it was a lot of gang violence. You had the gangster disciples against the vice lords, and they couldn't coexist. For a small town with young men who grew up, all through elementary and junior high, then they began to be on opposite sides of towns, and then they act like they didn't, know each other, or they really wanted to, harm one another. But, when I came in town and I seen these same particular individuals when they were young, Now they up playing baseball together. They hug and they touch and they eat and congregating. It showed me something better, about Benton Harbor and how once you mature, you can go into a particular mind state that you can leave all the foolishness behind, and that's the beauty of that. I myself have came up and I was hungry one day and I didn't know how the food thing went. I'm like, if they selling food, they was like, no, just go up there and get you a plate. But at the same time, they was like, but if you want to donate, you can. So the first time that I bought some fish, I got me a few pieces of fish, but I gave them $10 because I realized it was the donation part of it. You guys were looking for money, but I wanted to be a part of something that continued because the money is to buy food so you can continue to go on. So that's the beauty in that. And of course, anytime you're from, a certain particular community, that, violence definitely has been, very high off and on this summer. But that has been my Sunday getaway, to come up there and watch all the guys that I knew, coming up, whether at one point in my life I didn't care for me, but to be able to shake hands with them guys and see them having their children up there and, the little kids be on the side playing basketball, and you have the, elderly who sit back, like you say, behind the baseball or home run fence with their lawn chairs. I mean, that's just a beautiful look. You guys definitely have something strong going on. So as it relates to, of course, in any sport, you're going to have bad calls. You're going to have people upset, be mad at the umpire. But, still as, mature adults, we know how to get past that to, make the game continue. But other than that, have there been any significant fights or violence out there? Anything?
No, actually, we make jokes out of it. And actually, like, when we started playing Bosch, that's when, like, a lot of, like, the whining and the crying and the drama was trying to come in. So we kind of had to kind of like put them in their place, like, this is not what we're about. If the umpire makes a call, no one argues with the umpire.
Live with it.
So they understood that and totally embraced it, and we just ran with it.
Yeah. So in my eyes, you definitely,
Even when I listen to this interview, I'm just still blown away because you'll hear a lot of people saying that even in this community, oh, no one works together, no one's trying to do anything. It's just, especially on social media, you may see a whole lot of complaining, but it's like, no, this was an opportunity to take action, bring people together. I mean, there's teams. I mean, there's food. When you said fish, I was just thinking like just hot dogs and hamburgers or something on the grill, but
no.
I'm like, oh,
they didn't want some fish, fajitas, everything.
What?
Yeah, food, right?
Wow, and then just
barbecue chicken. I mean, it's
what?
Yeah.
And my thing is, wow, it's so many people that don't know about this. Because I had no idea that it was going on. Like, I was just thinking, like, gosh, do I not have the right friends on Facebook? Like, no one is posting about this, or, no one at my job is talking about it. And I just feel like I've missed out. Like I said, man, I'd have missed a season of actually doing something on a Sunday during COVID, like outside. Because we actually had some great weather this summer and even going into this fall, because we really haven't even had snow yet either. But I said, man, for me, I was just thinking like, I, as a community member, have missed out. Seriously, I feel duped. I feel hoodwinked. I feel bamboozled. Just like, what did I miss? What did I miss? Right. So what was some other things that really stood out with Toya's interview?
How she, raising her children, but to go back, right, and, talk about the Campbell family. Precious, she's a Campbell, she's part of that tree, her mom is a Campbell.
Okay.
And, that's a family I've definitely, been close with since I was young, because Precious' uncle is one of my closest friends, But yeah, that family is a big family and they do great things. I mean, they all play sports, whether it's baseball, basketball, or done something. They have a lot of beautiful women with, great hearts in their family. And yeah, so they all sit back. It's, just sort of like the baseball game where people sitting behind the home run wall of fence, and when a home run is hit, they got their gloves back there. So it makes the atmosphere just that much more greater. When you have older people, you have elderly and older people out there. So it makes you also want to behave because those older people may know your mom or your aunt. So so it keeps a lot of things in check, and we really don't realize it. But yeah. Listening to Toya also, talk about her struggle, right? And as a single mom, what the accomplishments that she's definitely, or the path, that she's taken to, to have something in her life with being a chef, at the same time raising daughters, sons. It's the typical, strong Black woman, story in our communities. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, right?
Listen here, that was good, right? That was real good. So you have to come back. So we'll see you next time when the Please Do Tell podcast returns with this special series of everyday people, stories from the 49022, and part 2 of our conversation with Mr. Perry Jackson. We'll see you then.